They don't sing yet. They don't sing.
Right.
They don't rap yet. And they already have Grammys.
When it was 2016, you know, the game has been elevated. As we can tell, there's no expense being spared. We had a black billionaires lunch.
Black excellence, they're sitting there like, yeah. It's a billionaire brunch. Like,
I hate you, man.
unaware of anything going on here. This is the one time I'm gonna be with you niggas this year. When he signed that contract, the marriage contract, he got trophies. Now those fucking trophies came rolling in, buddy. He started getting Grammys left and right, man.
Power doesn't vanish. It just learns how to stay quiet. For decades, hip-hop sold us one idea. Talent rises, hard work wins, the best survive. But when the same names stay untouchable and others disappear without explanation, you start asking different questions. 50 Cent's new documentary doesn't feel like entertainment. It feels like a message. Not about music, about control. About who gets elevated, who gets blocked, and who never gets a second chance. Before accusations, before theories, the film shows us something familiar. Success, luxury, influence.
It's 2020, y'all. And it's different than when it was 2016. You know, the game has been elevated. As we can tell, there's no expense being spared. We had a black billionaires lunch.
It looks like celebration, but 50 wants you to look closer. Because while the spotlight was on parties and power, the real decisions were happening off camera. This isn't about one downfall, it's about a system. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. 50 Cent isn't an outsider looking in. He's someone the industry tried to push out. Before the charts, before the movies, before the empire, he was already a problem. Not because he lacked talent, but because he refused to stay quiet. Labels in New York didn't just pass on him, they closed ranks. Doors stopped opening, phones stopped ringing, and that experience shaped everything that came next. 50 learned early that hip-hop wasn't just about bars or buzz, it was about who controlled access, radio, labels, visibility. So instead of begging for approval, he did the opposite. He turned confrontation into currency, truth into leverage. When 50 talks now, it doesn't sound polished, it sounds intentional.
Oh, that's your big homie, right? So you image yourself after a gay painter. The big homie want to look like a gay painter.
What are we talking about here?
We're talking about Basquiat. He wants to look like a gay painter.
It's blunt, uncomfortable, and impossible to ignore. That's the point. Because 50's role in this documentary isn't to play diplomat, it's to disrupt narratives that have gone unchallenged for years. And once you understand why he doesn't fear burning bridges, you start to understand why this documentary exists at all. On the surface, hip-hop looked competitive. Rappers battling for charts, labels chasing hits, cities fighting for dominance. But 50's documentary reframes it completely. What if it wasn't competition at all? What if it was containment? According to insiders featured in the film, the industry didn't want chaos, it wanted control. By the early 2000s, East Coast artists were getting expensive. They wanted ownership, creative freedom, real leverage. Meanwhile, the South offered something labels preferred: lower costs, faster returns, fewer demands. So attention shifted, resources dried up, projects quietly disappeared. And when 50 started buzzing in New York, something strange happened. Nobody would sign him. Not because he couldn't sell, but because he didn't fit the plan. That's when his story took a hard turn west.
You've never heard me say anything negative. You see what I'm saying? And also connected to like M, because M's our relationship. My Eminem is Dr. Dre is Eminem's. To Eminem to me is what Dr. Dre is to Eminem.
Yeah.
So to disrespect him in any way, it's just you're out of pocket. You're not even following the chain of command now.
Do y'all?
That relationship wasn't just mentorship, it was rescue. While one side of the industry shut doors, another side let him in and let him win. And that's why 50's success isn't framed as luck in this documentary. It's framed as proof. Proof of what happens when someone slips past a system that was never designed for them to succeed. Every system has a middleman, someone who doesn't just play the game, they connect the players. In 50's documentary, that role belongs to Diddy. Not just a hitmaker, not just a mogul, a connector. The kind of person who could turn a party into a power meeting and a guest list into a leverage map. According to the film, influence didn't always move through contracts. Sometimes it moved through proximity. Who you stood next to, who you were seen with, who let you into the room. And Diddy controlled those rooms. It looks casual, friendly, almost meaningless, but the documentary suggests moments like this mattered more than headlines. Because when careers stalled or surged, the same names kept showing up in the background. Diddy, in 50's telling, wasn't just enjoying the spotlight, he was shaping access. And when one person controls access long enough, they stop looking like a participant, they start looking like a gate. Power has a strange effect. It doesn't just protect the person at the center, it shields the people standing closest. As Diddy's public image began to crack, 50's documentary shifts focus to an uncomfortable question. If the fall was this deep, who was close enough to feel the heat, but far enough to walk away untouched? The film doesn't accuse, it observes. Years of shared spaces, private events, business conversations that never made headlines.
It's 2020, y'all. And it's different than when it was 2016. You know, the game has been elevated. As we can tell, there's no expense being spared. We had a black billionaire's lunch.
On screen, it looks nothing. Just another moment, another era. But after Diddy's conviction, those same images land differently. The documentary points to a pattern, not of guilt, but of survival. Some figures collapse under scrutiny, others remain insulated, and that contrast becomes impossible to ignore. Because when scandals expose one man, they also reveal the structure around him. The question isn't who fell, it's why others didn't. Every empire has a turning point. In this documentary, 50 Cent argues Jay-Z's wasn't an album, it was a wedding. Before Beyonce, Jay-Z was powerful, but polarizing. Respected in the streets, feared in business, surrounded by old cases, old rumors, and an image that made corporate partners nervous. Then, everything shifted. The film suggests the marriage didn't just change public perception, it reset it.
They signed his contract. The big one was with Beyonce. When he signed that contract, the marriage contract, he got trophies. Now those fucking trophies, trophies came rolling in, buddy. He started getting Grammys left and right, man. I mean, look, if you look at his career,
This guy. We're gonna let him say that. Jay was getting Grammys.
he had one.
Exactly.
He had one.
And he didn't show up.
He had like 20 now. He had like 18 since he's been down. Look, he had one, bro. Hard Knock Life.
You're not wrong.
He was one. After that, he got them shits. He's straight drinking. Fucking things to cup.
Wait a minute. So you're saying the success is derived from the marriage?
Absolutely, been treated differently.
The accolades.
Because he's no longer viewed as what, like a street or gangster rapper. Now he's viewed as a businessman, entrepreneur, family man.
And the biggest ones because of the position Beyonce's.
Oh, wow.
Suddenly, the narrative softened. Jay-Z wasn't framed as a street figure anymore. He was a visionary, a mogul, a family man. And with that shift came rewards.
So you can look at that and say the association to Beyonce is when he started to receive the 16, 17 Grammys since he's been with Beyonce, right? And you go, prior to that, one.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So that came in association, like you see the kids even have Grammys. Like they don't sing yet. They don't sing.
Right.
They don't rap yet. And they already have Grammys and shit. So it's like they give them this trophy so we secure that they're coming to the award show. It meant that much to the culture that they just gave them the things that...
Grammys stacked up, brand deals followed, doors that once stayed closed swung wide open. The documentary doesn't deny love, but it asks something more uncomfortable. Was this romance or reinforcement? Because in hip-hop, image isn't decoration, it's protection. Up to this point, the documentary feels accusatory, so it pauses and lets Jay-Z speak. Not as a mogul, not as a symbol, but as someone who claims he was pushed into power, not handed it.
So on top of the business side of Jay-Z. You know what I'm saying? Some people like to just be an artist.
Yeah, I was actually forced to be an artist and a businessman because when I tried to get a deal, I couldn't get a deal, so I had to create Rockefeller Records. We actually created Rockefeller Records from nothing. And, so I was forced to know both sides of the business.
In his telling, the businessman wasn't a choice, it was survival. No deal meant no future, so he built his own system. Rockefeller Records wasn't just a label, it was a response to exclusion. And this moment matters because it complicates everything. It suggests that control can come from necessity, not just ambition. But the documentary doesn't let that explanation sit alone. It quietly asks whether survival eventually turned into strategy. At what point does protecting yourself become protecting power? And when does independence stop looking like freedom and start looking like insulation? Some stories don't fade, they wait. For more than a decade, one claim has followed Jay-Z quietly, surfacing in courtrooms, then disappearing again. The documentary doesn't treat it as a verdict, it treats it as a pattern. A man named Rymir Satterswave has long claimed Jay-Z is his biological father. The courts dismissed the case, but the questions never fully went away. Now 50's documentary pulls that story back into the light, not to prove guilt, but to show how power responds to pressure.
Withdrawing my case is for a reason, y'all. It's not because I'm stopping with it or not going to refile it or anything like that. It's just a lot going on behind closed doors. That's only one case that we withdrew for right now. But it's a lot going on. You know how this industry works. These judges, these lawyers, these high celebrity people, they try to use all different types of tactics and call it what you want, bully tactics and different types of stuff to, you know, slow it down and just change the narrative. So it's like,
what stands out isn't just the claim itself, it's the language, delays, procedures, narratives being managed. The film frames the case as something larger than paternity. It's about imbalance. What happens when one side has unlimited resources and the other is fighting just to be heard? And that's where the story shifts focus, away from Jay-Z and toward the person who refused to let the case die. The documentary makes one thing clear. This story isn't driven by fame. It's driven by exhaustion. Raimir's legal guardian, Lily Kohler, isn't framed as someone chasing headlines. She's portrayed as someone being slowly worn down. Years of filings, appeals that went nowhere, courtrooms that felt sealed shut. According to her claims, the fight stopped being about a DNA test long ago. It became about paperwork, procedure, and pressure.
Stop being a victim of fraud. Because the underlying issues with this case is dealing with void orders, fraudulent things, attorneys knew. Now, most of you know, this is all about money. In the very beginning, it started out, of course, me doing the complaint.
The film walks through her accusations carefully. Void orders, fraudulent filings, legal maneuvers that never reached open review. And the cost, she says, was devastating.
Being a victim of fraud, I had to go to bankruptcy court. And the reason why I went to bankruptcy court was to have them help me with what they call an adversary complaint. An adversary complaint deals with my inheritance, which was my property that had a legal lien on it. Because the underlying issues for this case is dealing with void orders, fraudulent things, all things were used to put a lien on my property.
Bankruptcy, property liens, a legal battle so expensive it erased her stability. The documentary never declares who's right. Instead, it asks a harder question. What chance does truth have when one side can outspend time itself? And with that, the film shifts again, from the courtroom to the boardroom. After the courtrooms, the documentary changes scenery, not to another scandal, but to a deal. Jay-Z's billion-dollar partnership with the NFL. At the time, it was sold as progress, a seat at the table, a chance for hip-hop and black voices to reshape a powerful institution. But in 50 Cent's framing, the move looks different, less like resistance, more like alignment. The film places this moment against the backdrop of Colin Kaepernick, still unsigned, still absent, while halftime stages grew bigger, glossier, and safer. Representation increased, resistance didn't. Critics in the documentary argue the message changed, from challenging the system to managing its image. Jay-Z's role shifted too, from outspoken rebel to corporate liaison, from voice of the people to gatekeeper for what was acceptable. The documentary doesn't call it betrayal. It asks something more unsettling. At what point does fighting the system turn into working for it? And once activism becomes a brand, who does it really serve? The documentary is careful here. It doesn't introduce new charges. It lines up old behavior. Former associates and industry insiders describe the same feeling: distance, control, silence. Stories from the late 90s and early 2000s surface again. Luxury events, private rooms, rules that seemed to bend for one person. One former promoter recalls a moment that stuck with him. Jay-Z arriving late, ignoring hosts, dismissing security concerns until the tension nearly boiled over. Not explosive, just revealing. The film suggests these weren't isolated moments, they were signals, a growing sense of untouchability, a belief that narrative mattered more than explanation. Legal disputes are revisited too, not for verdicts, but for consistency. Avoided tests, strategic distance, problems that quietly dissolved instead of resolving. As 50's voice cuts over old footage, the message is simple. Power doesn't create character, it exposes it. The segment ends with a quiet visual shift. Tabloid headlines fade, corporate press releases replace them, and somewhere in between, image overtakes identity. At this point, the film stops naming names and starts naming mechanisms. Because 50 Cent's argument isn't that one artist controls hip-hop, it's that no artist ever did. Behind the charts, the awards, and the headlines, the documentary points to something quieter. Executives, radio programmers, investment groups, an ecosystem where visibility is granted, not earned. According to insiders, release dates can be stalled, radio spins can vanish, award buzz can be manufactured or erased, not by talent, by threat level. Artists who play along rise smoothly. Artists who push back get labeled difficult, unstable, unmarketable. The film connects dots across decades, showing how different careers, 50 Cent, Kanye West, Lauryn Hill, all hit resistance after challenging control. One line lands hard. It's not about who's the best, it's about who the system feels safe betting on. And that's the most dangerous idea in the documentary. because if culture is managed, then freedom was never really the deal. In the end, the documentary doesn't crown a hero. It draws a line. On one side, a culture built from the ground up. Artists, fans, voices that refused to ask permission. On the other, a polished empire. Lawyers, contracts, silence, and distance. Throughout the film, that contrast keeps returning. 50 is shown as reachable, messy, unfiltered, still connected to the streets that shaped him. Jay-Z, by contrast, appears insulated, surrounded by security, legal teams, and billion-dollar structures designed to absorb impact. And the documentary asks one final question. In a culture born from truth-telling, which image earns loyalty? The man who speaks, even when it's inconvenient, or the icon who never has to? 50's closing message lands quietly but firmly. Silence protects power. Voice protects culture. Diddy wasn't the end. He was the beginning. The film hints at what comes next. Sealed records, quiet settlements, stories that never made it to court. Truth doesn't expire. It just waits. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think success in hip-hop is earned or engineered? If you want more deep dive breakdowns like this, support the channel by liking the video. It really helps. Subscribe to Celeb News today and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next, because the truth doesn't disappear. It just waits. See you in the next one.